This is Eric Rutan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
Welcome all. I have a tremendous conversation to share with you featuring the most criminally underrated musician in all of rock and heavy metal. I stand behind that statement because I'm talking about Joey Vera. Those who know, you know, because Joey's just about done it all. He's a member of Armored Saint, Fate's Warning, has played in Anthrax, a bunch of other bands as well. The catalyst for this conversation, though, is due to the launch of the new album from the supergroup, Motor Sister. Motor Sister features Joey alongside of Scott Ian from Anthrax, Jim Wilson from Rollins Band and Mother Superior, and Scott Ian's wife, who also happens to be Meat Loaf's daughter, Pearl Aday. So the group is, as I say, a bit of an all-star cast, and the album Get Off, it's a worthy album actually. You'll hear why I like it throughout the conversation. Before we get to the chat, and this is a very important conversation and milestone in my podcasting career, I must say, because when I started this podcast, Joey was one of the fellas I had in mind that I wanted to talk to. I've been wanting to talk to this fella for decades. I won't spoil it though. I don't want to go into a whole heap of superlatives in the introduction. So let's cut to the tune that I have selected for your listening pleasure. This one is titled Can't Get High Enough, and again it's taken from the new album from Motor Sister, Get Off. You will hear that right now if you are listening via any one of the podcast apps. If you're listening or tuning in via YouTube because you want to check out the video of us talking, I can't play it, unfortunately, because I'll get shadow banned. That's just how YouTube works, or I'll get demonetized at least, and I think you also get shadow banned. Either way, we'll cut to the conversation if you're listening via YouTube, and for you people listening via the podcast apps, Spotify, Apple, etc., you're going to hear Can't Get High Enough. Let's go. Joey, how you going?
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm great. What's the, apart from these interviews, mate, what's the day held for you thus far?
The what?
What's the day been like so far, apart from the interviews, of course?
Oh, well, fighting a bit of a flu, unfortunately. It's been really nice. Probably the only silver lining in this pandemic thing is I haven't been sick in 2 years. Until yesterday. So, but it's just the flu. I tested and everything. It's negative, but it's, still hitting me hard. I forgot what it felt like.
It still sucks. I've had the same thing happen. I had two in a row. Some two viral bloody things in a row, and it's all because you probably read the usual news reports. Australia's been bloody locked down, one of the most locked down places in the Western Hemisphere. So yeah, we didn't get anything for 2 years, but now we're all getting all of these bloody bullshit bugs and viruses that have been saved up for us in lieu of the 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. It's saving us a nice present after 2 years.
Yeah, indeed.
Oh well,
yeah.
we just need to get immune to these again, all over again.
Yeah, fun. Great. Yeah, time out of work and work keeps on piling up and all the rest of it. Kids still need to, get to school and all the rest of it. I know it's like life doesn't wait, does it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. How have the conversations for this album been going?
Motor Sister.
Motor Sister. Yep.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to be clear on that. Really good. The response has been really great from what I can tell, mostly just through social media. I haven't done a whole lot of interviews, done a handful, but everybody seems to dig it. The record took on a sort of more energetic life or high energy life than the previous record. And I think that's connecting with people. So that's really cool. So yeah, it's going good.
Look, you're right. So the opportunity to have this conversation is because the album's called Get Off. So for people listening in later, and it is the new album from Motor Sister. It's either your second or your third. I found information a bit hard to come across where we're up to.
It's our second record.
Second, there you go.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a seasoned rock and metal listener, and I'm also a musician. And my takeaway from the album is it's one of those one of the few, I'm going to call it a super group. You know where I'm headed when I say that. But it's one of those few super groups where it sort of surpasses expectations. And I wouldn't say it unless I felt that way. Okay. I've been a fan of yours personally for decades now because I'm a bassist. So I listen intently to your performance across the albums that you appear. Magnificent bass player, I'm going to say up front.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. I don't think you get, I'll talk about that a bit later. I'll save some of the stuff around the bass playing for later, but I think you're criminally underrated. And you don't get the recognition and the due that you deserve on that front because you are an innovator. But as I say, I'll get to that. Look, with Get Off, you know, it's punk rock, it's Thin Lizzy, it's a bit of Anthrax, you know, it's Rollins Band. I could hear Rollins Band in there too. It's definitely Armored Saint. It's more than the sum of the influences and love. And it's more about the love of the band members' music, the music that you guys love. You've done it all. So am I accurate there, do you think? And what does the album mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the first record, that is, Ride, was born out of a previous group. I'm just saying this for people that maybe don't know a lot about the band. This is born out of another group called Mother Superior. And Jim Wilson, the singer from Motor Sister, was in Mother Superior along with a couple other guys. And we were all fans of the band. All great writers and great performers. Mother Superior had they were very steeped in like 70s rock, you know, and then they would fuse that sometimes with things that were kind of punk rock, you know, and I think that's one of the reasons maybe why Rollins was drawn to them as well, because he hired them to play in his band for a couple of years and record with them as well. So I think that we approached this band with that honor, you know, that love of, you know, where we all come from. We're all 70s kids. Everybody in the band is. We all grew up listening to 70s music. So we just want to, you know, bring that with us, but also add where our influences has gotten us into this day. So try to keep some things that are fresh. This isn't like, we're not trying to do a retro thing. You know, that's not what I mean. But, you know, it would be ridiculous to me to not say that, you know, that we come from the 70s and some of that fabric is showing through here. So I think it's a great record and a great group of people to work with for those reasons, because we get to like just get in the room and hash stuff out. And it's not really like totally serious. Like, you know, there isn't like a heavy weight on this group. Like it has to succeed. It has to do this or that, or it must reach this plateau or success, whatever. So we have this kind of liberty to just have fun. It's cool.
You can hear that. You can hear that you guys are having the times of your life, and that there's, I could be mistaken here, but it doesn't sound like there's a lot of pressure on you guys to perform.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it just makes the whole thing. We're just doing it for fun. That's how it started, and that's what we want to keep doing, you know. So, yeah.
I mean, I understand how the relationship with Scott's come about, but were you invited to be part of the project, or was it one of those organic things where you were sitting around having a few beverages and you went, "Hey, let's all start a band," that sort of thing?
Well, the true backstory of this, and I'll try to condense this as much as possible. Scott was having his 50th birthday several years ago. Won't say how many. And for his party, he said, I want to have Mother Superior play at my party. And it was like, okay, well, that's an idea. You know, his wife Pearl was like, okay, let me see about that, or whatever. And then he said, but I want to be in Mother Superior. I don't want to watch them. I want to play in the band, and I want my friends to be there too. And then I want my friends to also play in the band. So then it just turned into, well, we'll invite Jim, you know, and then I'll invite my other friends and I'll ask them if they want to jam. And that's pretty much how it started. So, you know, Scott, we were sitting around talking one day, and Scott was telling us, yeah, I want to have Jim come to the party, and I want to jam. I want you and, you know, Johnny and Pearl, and I want I want us to get together and learn a bunch of Mother Superior songs and just jam. And so we invited something like 50 people. It was a relatively small party. He had a jam room at his house. And so that's what we did. We got together, we jammed, and it was super fun. It was just a complete blast. It was just awesome. And then it was after that, like literally a couple of days later, the photographer Niels Lozauer, was a famous photographer here in Los Angeles.
Absolutely.
He's friends with Mike Faley over at Metal Blade, and he called Mike and he says, "Hey," he was at, Neil was at the party witnessing this. He's also a Mother Superior fan. And he said, "Mike, I was at this party with Scott last weekend, and they got together and they played all these Mother Superior songs. It was the best thing I've ever seen. You guys should put it out." Just sort of maybe like a half joke, sort of, you know? And so Mike called my wife, Tracy, who works at Metal Blade. She's basically the president of the label. He said, "Hey, why didn't you, why wasn't I invited to this thing? How was it? Was it good?" And she was like, "It was amazing. You should have been there," or whatever. So he said, "Neil says we should put it out." And then she said, "That's a really good idea." So then she basically called everyone and said, "Hey, would you guys be interested in putting out a record on Metal Blade?" And we said, "Yeah, let's do it." It was pretty much like that. It was so weird.
Yeah, it's a great album. Look, I get sent a lot of material, and there's a lot of these super groupy sort of things that do come out. But to be honest, a lot of them suck too. But one is one that's going to... Motor Sister sounds like as though it doesn't always work out this way, as I'm sure you're aware. I mean, you've played with more than almost anybody out there as far as bass playing is concerned. But as you will have likely experienced, it doesn't always work out when you take it from the fun environment of the party. Then you sit down and consciously try to write and record. So was that process, was it an easy process, or was it a difficult process effectively?
It was pretty easy because our intention, as soon as we decided we were going to make a record, we immediately all agreed that we had to basically recreate what we did at the party. So the only way to do that was to play live. So we went in as a group, we got in the same room. We didn't do any, click tracks and layering of instruments and drums first, then the bass, then the guitar. I mean, we all played together in the same room, including the vocalists, and we did everything live. Now, truth be told, at the end, we ended up redoing the vocals because there was just way too much bleed in the microphones and stuff. But that's how Ride was made. That record is all live. And so when we made this record, Get Off, we just wanted to keep that same aesthetic, So we basically did the same thing. We all got in a room, facing each other in the room, and no click tracks, just, John clicks us in, and then we go at the song until we get it. And, we'd never play a song more than 2 or 3 times, and then it would be done. So we tried to keep that aesthetic really alive. We're not concerned with everything being perfect and everything being, just perfect. And it's like the worst thing ever for this band.
Yeah, to kill the groove.
Yeah, it's just the vibe goes out the window,
Yeah.
So
yeah. As I say, I get sent a lot of material, and the amount of shit that is quantized is ridiculous. It's still just because you've got the technology virtually for nothing doesn't mean you should use it. It's like you say, bands need to breathe in the rehearsal studio and then try to translate that, I think, to a record. And you guys have done that fairly successfully there. So, and this is definitely not a criticism of the album, by the way, or your exceptional playing. But I've got to say, I would have loved to have heard you branch out a bit more into. I mean, I've only had it since last night, but I rate your bass playing incredibly highly. I would just love to hear more of it. That's the only comment that I've got to say. I was hoping to hear a bit more of it.
So did you get the chance? That got more than others.
Yeah, did you get the chance to do more? Yeah, sorry.
You mean playing, like actual playing more?
Yeah, just, I mean, you can shred.
Just going off?
Yeah, you can shred and you can stay in the pocket, but it's lovely to hear both.
Yeah, this record was... it's funny the way we work. We've been writing this record for a long time, like over 2 years, just really piecemeal, just bits and pieces here and there. And it really wasn't until you know, we got together in November of 19. I think it was October or November of 19 for our first rehearsal. So we're kind of like sharing demo tapes back and forth, that kind of thing. But we got in the room the first day and we basically just had a bunch of parts and ideas, and lyrics weren't written yet or anything. And we basically wrote like 9 songs the first day. So, you know, that just shows you like how fast we put this together kind of. And then we did one more rehearsal session after that in December. And we wrote basically another couple of songs. And then we were basically done. And we played a live show in LA right around that time. And we went in the studio in January or February of 20, right when COVID was hitting. But so, you know, the songs, I didn't have a whole lot of time to live with them, you know, to be like, you know, play them. I literally probably played these songs, I don't know, maybe 10 times total before I actually recorded it. So I didn't have a lot of time to just feel what part could use more lifting or more melody, let's say, or something like that. You know, the songs were relatively new to me. So I went into this just like, keep it simple. Don't, you know, no reason to show off for any particular reason. You know, some of the songs more than others have some things that are maybe more interesting, but mostly I wanted to just hold it down, you know, kind of went for Cliff Williams' approach of just being like, just lock in with the drums and just keep it simple. But there, you know, there's a few things out in the record that, you know, let me go off a bit. You know, there's the song Sooner or Later. For some reason, that song reminded me of a Tom Petty song. So I just felt this sort of Tom Petty melody thing with the bass guitar. So I just sort of branched out and did it, and everyone seemed to like it. So that's what ended up being the main part for that song. But so, you know, my answer is the songs were sort of new to me, and you know, in making a record, you know, I've always said this, you know, the most important thing is the song, number one. So as long as I can serve the song, then my job's done. You know, I can start going off and getting crazy, get all Jack Bruce or whatever when we play live, you know. So
I think that's admirable, because a lot of you hear like, as you know, they've got the 9-string bass players these days, for God's sakes. But it's not in the pocket though, so it just sounds like a mess. It just sounds like a kid scribbling. Some of it, doesn't it? I mean, I'm old school. I play 4 and 5-string basses. You know, with a female vocalist, I play with a 5-string bass. I just find that it's a good counterbalance there. But look, the comment that I wanted to make for you is I've long felt that you are the metal equivalent to Nathan East. Have you ever been given that feedback?
Wow. You know, what's funny is someone else said that to me. One other person said that to me, and that's crazy. I never thought I'd hear that again. That's a big honor. You know, he's like that. You know, Nathan's. I mean, he's the shit. You know, he holds it down, pocket groove. He can have chops when he needs to. You know, not flashy. You know, so yeah. I mean, you know, when I was younger, when I was first in a band, you know, like early Armored Saint, let's say, you know, you kind of, when you're young, you feel like you have something to prove all the time, you know? So I definitely had that in my playing. I always wanted to write something that was impressive, you know, as the bass part, you know, but it wasn't really until much later that I don't know, when I was in my 30s, I guess, and 30s and early 40s, when I just started to say, like, you know, it's all about the song. It's not about me. You know, like, what the hell? What am I doing? You know, I mean, it's not like I was going out there and being completely crazy. And you know what? Some players and some bands are good for that. They're good for chops and riffing. You know, just you know, players that are amazing, and that's. I love a lot of that kind of music, but just for me, it just wasn't in my soul and my fabric growing up. I grew up with the old school players in the 70s, and a lot of them were R&B and funk players. So I was like,
I can hear that. Yeah.
I was mostly drawn towards that, and blues rock players, I should say. So that's really what my foundation is. And that's pretty much the thing that I excel at most. I was never really a great shredder. And, everyone goes through their period of, practicing because I want to keep up with the other shredders and the other guys. But at some point I just said, it's not me. It's not my voice, Mm-hmm. So my voice is what we hear now. So
yeah,
except it's not as hoarse.
Yeah. Look, something else about you, and I don't know whether people are aware, but I think you play guitar. You play guitar very well.
Yeah, and I started with guitar first.
Yeah, but usually what happens then, and I'm the opposite. I'm a bassist that switched to guitar for a period of time. Now I'm back on the bass, but so effectively I played the guitar as a bass player does, just sticking to bar chords, this sort of thing, just trying to lock it down. But my point is that you do have a solo album out there from 1994, the 1,000 Faces, if I'm not mistaken, it's called. And there are a couple of videos out there for people to sample. But it does show you, and I mean, a lot of that stuff to me sounded, it fit in really well with the alternative music that was going on at the time, Sponge, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, this sort of stuff. Did you get a bit of, was there an opportunity to do a follow-up after that?
Well, I do have a second record, but it's not, it came out much later. It came out in 2005. And it's called, it's a Chinese fire drill. The record's called Circles. And this record it came out originally on Prog Rock Records, but it's since been discontinued, but you can still find it on CD Baby and a few other places digitally. And that record is way more influenced by my work with Fates Warning. So a lot of it's really proggy and kind of artsy. And there's a little bit of Tool in there, kind of, but it's not really that heavy. But so it's a really big, complete 180 from 1,000 Faces. It's completely different. 1,000 Faces was kind of like a project thing. It was I had just Armored Saint had just broken up, and I was sort of in this phase of who am I? What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? And so I just started writing music for no apparent reason. And I wrote a lot of different kinds of songs, and some of them were sort of folky, and some of them were hard rock, and some of them were semi-industrial. And, so, they were reflecting the time, 1993, 94. Yeah. And so I had this opportunity to put it together. And someone said, you can use my studio if you want to. Like, that never happens, right? And record all these songs. So I said, that would be amazing. I mean, thank you, So I went in and recorded, 8-10 songs or something. And so it's a bit of a mishmash. It's super unfocused. You've heard it, I guess, but that was the whole one thing, the second one, Circles, is much more, my intention was much more focused, and one direction. I was taking it in a particular way. I've always played guitar since day one. I started guitar when I was 13 or something. And I switched to bass when I was 15 or 16. And then it became my primary instrument at that point. But I always played guitar. I mean, I never write music on the bass. I write everything I've ever written has always been on a guitar. So there may be some exceptions, but mostly I'd say 95% of it is written on the guitar. And, I don't practice guitar a lot. I could probably be a lot better if I again, put some hours into it. But I just, it facilitates what's in my head for the most part. And then, so I've my learning of theory has made my guitar playing better. So I've become better in that sense, more aware of melody and chord structures and harmony and stuff. So
most guitarists who pick up the bass sound bloody awful, in my opinion. They don't know how to groove and they don't stick in the pocket. You are the only person that I'm aware of out there of significance. You know, you can see a guy in a bar or whatever, but I'm talking about a globally recognised figure within rock and metal that's successfully made that transition, and you sound like a bass player. Now, to people listening, they're like, of course a bass player playing the bass will sound like a bass player, except if you're a musician. And you can hear guitarists playing across the beat. You're underneath it. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you know, and I think I did it early enough to be like, you know, I'm basically a bass player. I'm not a guitar player first. I'm a bass player first. So, but I think that being introduced to the guitar first, I went into it with a bit more things in my toolbox, let's say. So by the time like I was 15 or 16 when I picked it up, and I picked it up really quickly, and I think it's for those reasons because I had played guitar for a couple of years of new chords and the notes in the chord and that kind of stuff. You know, I was 15, you know? And no instruction really. So, and at that time, you know, was when I picked up the bass, I very quickly moved to finger playing, because the first year I was playing with a pick, obviously, because I was a guitar player, but I made the move pretty quickly to fingers. And I was listening to like, you know, Geezer Butler and Verdine White from Earth, Wind & Fire, nice. Jaco Pastorius, of course. And, you know, at that point, I was already introduced to those guys. So I started trying to imitate them, what I was hearing with my fingers. And so I did that fairly early. And I think that that's been one of the benefits to me making the switch over to bass.
Yep. Yeah, cool. Yeah. No, I've always wanted to, as I said up top, I've been a fan for decades and I've wanted to have this conversation with you. So thanks for giving me that deep insight. And yeah, and I do think for anybody listening, do check out the 1,000 Faces album. You know, if you've been given an opportunity like a tour support to a ministry or a Primus or something like that, you never know what could have happened there, because you are a frontman too. You've got a lot of, you know, you talk about a lot in your kit bag. You go well outside of the string side of things. You've actually got the charisma to be a front man as well, in my opinion.
I don't know. I mean, I kind of, you know, to be honest with you, that 1,000 Faces thing, it was actually me dabbling in that, because I actually put a band together and I did a few shows around here in California with me as the front man. And it, you know, it was okay for like 10 minutes. And then I realized, I don't need to be the front man. I'm not super comfortable in that skin as the front man. I'm happy to be a team player. I think my biggest asset is that I'm a really good team player. So I'm willing to be with other people and contribute in a way that it doesn't, you know, that it only enhances whatever the experience is on stage. I just want to help it, not take away from it, not change it, you know. So I think that's my biggest asset right there. And that I certainly like to be animated in that role. You know, maybe that's what you're referring to. And as I do, music makes me feel a certain way, and it's the one place on stage is the one place I feel a complete freedom from everything.
Yes, I understand that. Yeah, I relate to that.
So So it's a place for me it's a happy place. So I can just be in that moment, at that moment, whatever. And it's going to be completely different tomorrow. And it was completely different yesterday, but I try to revel in that moment.
Yeah, I just think you look the part. You had the hair, you know, you had the lights behind you going through there. You almost, it's a reference that I hope you take as a compliment. But there's some Sammy Hagar stuff going on there, you know. And,
you know, like I said, I tried it and it was fun. And it was funny. Like one of the shows that we played, we opened for Korn. If you can believe that.
Oh my God!
Yeah. This was before Korn was even selling out clubs, but they did a gig in like, I think it was Tempe, Arizona or Phoenix, Arizona. And I don't know how, but we got offered to open the show. So I'm like, okay, I had no idea who Korn was, but they were going on last. So, okay, they're headlining and all. We would go on before them. No idea who they were. None. Not a clue. And, I was pretty impressed by them because it was so outside the box. It was, when I saw their set, it was just like, wow, what the hell is going on with this band? Super dissonant, crazy drummer, singers going nuts too. And it was pretty cool to see. And in hindsight, it was cool to see. At the time, it was like, wow, what is this? It was almost weird and off-putting, but obviously great band, obviously.
Well, they've been a successful band. I don't know whether they're a better band in terms of, from my perspective, than Fate's Warning, or it's definitely not better than Armored Saint. Sorry, that's an opinion I'll put out there. But a lot of people feel that way.
Well, that's my little claim to fame there. It's like I opened for Korn one day.
I wonder if, what's his name? Fieldy, the bassist. I wonder if Fieldy knew who you were.
No, and that's a good question. Good question. I've never met those guys, so I don't know them. I mean, if I knew them and if they expressed any kind of like, hey, I remember you from whatever, Black in the Day, whatever. And I said, you know what? I actually opened for you guys one time in Arizona. They'd be like, what? Really? Why? It was funny too, because it was funny because we were playing our set, and the audience was like, I'm obviously at that time there's a bunch of young people, right? Because it was the new subgenre boiling under, grassroots thing was starting. So we'd end the song and then we'd hear like more, and we were like, are they like asking for an encore? Like, we're not done yet. Why are they saying more? And then I realized they're not saying more. They're saying Korn. Korn. Get off the fucking stage.
Oh my God. Yeah.
True story.
I have seen them, and I've got to say, I don't really get it. I certainly understand the appeal of the first two albums. I'll say that now, but beyond that, I'm not really there. Them and Limp Bizkit and stuff really ruined, I think, a lot of metal for people. And it's not, look, more power to them for the success they've had. I just don't know. Here's an important point. I don't know how much of a gateway they've truly acted for people to investigate heavier and more detailed sounds, such as Armored Saint. The old gateway theory. Bands with Led Zeppelin, and they might go to a sort of Metallica, and they end up at death and black metal. Very common. Yeah. But I don't know whether Korn do that. I tend to find the Korn fans stay in that particular musical precinct, and don't sort of dive deeper into more complicated and, dare I say, more mature sounds. Mm-hmm. But this is my opinion.
Yeah. They have their thing, and they do it well for what they do. And at that point when they reached the masses, the masses unfortunately are very rarely invested in searching out anything deeper. It's unfortunate, but it's true. But hey, it's my hat's off to them. They were very successful.
Another significant partnership is yours and Jack Frost's. I love what you guys did in Seven Witches, and I've got to say, Jack is one of my all-time favourite guitarists. So seeing both of you in a band together was unbelievable. Can that ever happen again? Well,
I never say never about anything. So I would love to work with Jack again. We're bros. We hang out. We don't see each other. We live on different parts of the coast, but when we do see each other, it's like no time has passed. So I'm still in touch with him. He's doing, I think he's playing with Aldo Nova right now, believe it or not.
Well, okay.
And so, I would love to do more stuff with Jack. He's awesome.
Yeah. His most recent album's an absolute killer album, Brothers in Arms. I was hoping to hear you on it, to be honest with you. I wish he invited you to participate, but because that was the only thing that was really lacking, was some really, there's some good bass playing on there, no disrespect to the bassists that are on there, but I like what you guys do together. It's tough, it's heavy, but it's groovy.
Cool. Thank you.
Punching the Sky. I would never say it was a return to form or anything like that, but there was certainly a pop with that album, wasn't there? Did you feel that there was a resurgence in interest in the group on the back of that album?
Well, I think it's been something that's been growing, the resurgence, if you will, or I don't know. Yeah, I guess resurgence of, at least the resurgence of the perception of the band. that has been growing since 2010, I would say, when we released La Raza. And, then 5 years after that, we did Win Hands Down. And then another 5 passed and we had Punch in the Sky. So in 15 years, we've got 3 records out, which is really long by most standards. But I think that maybe that it benefits us in terms of of what we feel like writing and when we feel like writing and how that's affecting the writing. Kind of the same situation with Motor Sister. We don't really have a big schedule that's weighing on us, with Metal Blade and with our career. We don't have to be on a set schedule. We can pretty much work when and how we want to. And we have that great liberty with Metal Blade. So I think that's benefited the songwriting and the music that we've put out, because I don't know, maybe it gives us time to really step back and contemplate the music that we're going to write for the next record, sort of thing. We've never really been a band that's repeated ourselves. Not really, since day one. Every record's been a little different than the last, and I think we're still doing that. So I actually embraced that as one of the great traits that we have as a band, is our ability to kind of do that, to kind of not make the same record twice. Every record is always a bit different. So we kind of pride ourselves at this point on taking chances and experimenting a little more and bringing in influences from older days and stuff. And I think that, it would be amiss of me to not admit that social media has something to do with it too, because, let's face it, it was really starting to become something more in the early to mid 2000s. And so that has certainly not hurt us in terms of reaching people and sort of, maybe, if you will, reintroducing people to people that maybe they've heard the name, or their parents have an old T-shirt from the 90s or whatever, And so the internet has obviously brought us into this forum where we can reach people in an instant, mostly. So that's been a big plus. And so, yeah, it's been a good thing.
It was one of the albums of 2020, without a doubt. You're given the quality of the musicians and the fact that John is one of the all-time great rock and metal frontmen and vocalists, I've got to say. Yeah. For people out there who don't know, he was invited to join Metallica, if I'm not mistaken. That's how good John is. And of course, he was in Anthrax. Was there ever do you feel as though, looking back and with decades of hindsight now, was there ever a sliding moment for Armored Saint? Because I just don't feel like the group ever critical acclaim musicians like me love the group, in terms of the Korn fans, this sort of thing. In hindsight, was there a sliding doors moment where you feel like you might have been able to reach the broader masses, but maybe the opportunity wasn't taken?
Well, I don't know about it wasn't taken, but I would say maybe that moment came when we released Symbol of Salvation in 1992. Because, we kind of had this story at that point. We'd been a band for several years, at several records on a major label, and then we got dropped, and then we were on our way to be doing something. Making Symbol was very hard for us. We were having to pick up the pieces after losing Dave Pritchard to leukemia. And so there was a lot of anticipation and expectation on the record. And when the record came out, it got rave reviews everywhere. Everyone loved it. Got killer reviews and got a lot of airplay on MTV and stuff like that. But the music climate was saying otherwise. Mm-hmm. The music climate in America was making an about face, pretty much. And the very word heavy metal was becoming a bad word. So, and mostly due to hair metal in the late 80s. And so, the Seattle scene was obviously a shot in the arm that we all needed. I mean, I loved it. I still do. And it was something that was needed. It was ebb and flow, and we needed it at that point. Just unfortunately for us, putting out, a new record and kind of like this, I don't know, it was almost like a coming back together record. It was just terrible timing. The timing was just awful for that, and we would say, like, years later, we'd say, and people will still say this, if that record came out at a different time, things would have been different. That may be true, nothing's guaranteed, of course, right? But it may be true. We might have had a different chance, a different shot at reaching more people if it came out at a different time. So I would say, to answer your question, that would probably be it. 92, when Symbol of Salvation came out, was maybe that moment where it was like, it was just bad timing. It was like, no, you can't control bad timing. It is what it is, So that would probably be it.
Yeah, great album. The album that I was first aware of you guys because I was only 14 or 15 back at the time, but a killer album. I think Rain of Fire's on that album too, the big single that came out with the video and stuff. That's where I picked you guys up, actually, was from that video. But you've alluded to something there I've got to address. Please tell me that Armored Saint, I don't have any problem with the hair metal bands, and I don't think anybody with a brain does, the so-called hair metal bands, but were you guys lumped in with that? Because I always looked at you guys as a metal band like Manowar or something like that, you know what I mean? Like in that quadrant.
Well, we, excuse me. Again, this was a little bit of a quagmire we found ourselves in the mid 80s. We came out and when we first got signed, let's say, it was 83, 84. And by that time, all the bands in LA were kind of like, dressing the same. They were all dressing like Iron Maiden, striped black and white pants, leather vests, skinny jeans and high top tennis shoes. Mm-hmm. And so everyone dressed the same, bullet belts and all that stuff. So we wanted to try something different. We wanted to stand out from the rest. So we were really into bands like Queen and Kiss and Alice Cooper, bands that had this big theatrics, Jethro Tull. When you go to the concert, it's like it's a show. It takes you away out of reality, And so we were really inspired by that, and we wanted to try to go in that direction with our band. So we made that choice to suit up in this Road Warrior armor. We were heavily influenced by the Road Warrior and Mad Max at that time, and I don't believe the band Heaven was out yet, or we hadn't known about them yet. But they did something similar. But, so it kind of worked in the beginning because we were just like a powerhouse live band. And then we were wearing this armor. Like we looked like apocalyptic crazy dudes. And it worked at first. And the people loved it. It was great. But the thing that started to shift is when thrash metal started to become more popular. Right. I'd say around 85 and 86 when it was really starting to take off. You started to find fans picking and choosing what side they hung out with. And in the beginning, everyone was the same. In the early 80s, it was like you could like Lee Aaron, you could like Manowar, you could like Judas Priest, you could like, Nine Inch Nails or whatever. And you could like all of it and it was all fine. But when it got into the mid 80s, and especially when some of the more glam bands started to become more popular, people started to take alliances with those scenes, and you couldn't do both. Some people did both, but a lot of people wouldn't do both. So like a glam guy would have a hard time going to an SOD or like an Anthrax show in the early to mid 80s. He might get his ass kicked. So it was different then. It's a little more tolerant now, obviously, but there was a splintering, and we started to have, we started to find ourselves in the middle for some reason, because we didn't really associate with thrash metal, or definitely not the hair metal bands either. We're just ourselves. We're just being a heavy metal rock band that was influenced by some of the bands I mentioned, but also Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Saxon, and New British heavy metal, obviously. And so we it just got to a point where we started to have a little bit of a identity crisis. Where are we? What In the end, we actually had more in common with the thrash crowd because our live show was friggin' crazy. We were just really high energy, and people always, to this day, some people call us a thrash band, which I never really totally understood, but I get why they do it, but I don't totally understand that. And we've never really been lumped in with the hair metal scene at all, really. But, when Raising Fear was coming out, we started to drop the armor. The armor was coming off. And so now we're back into regular clothes. It's 1987, 88, and like the hair's kind of still poofy and teased up, and like we sort of look like a hair band, but like not a glam hair band, but just like a band with hair, And so there may have been some confusion at that point in the late 80s and even in the early 90s when Symbol was coming out, because again we had this look that was just kind of like leather jackets and jean jackets and hair, and you weren't quite sure what we were, if you didn't know anything about us. So yeah, we would get lumped in with both of those parties, and so that was one of the things that was a bit of a struggle for us, was we didn't really belong to either one of them.
Unfortunately, I've got to wind things up because I've got to go to work, get back to work. It sucks, to be honest with you, because I've got a heap more questions I want to ask you, but I want to finish with this one question
Sure.
for you. It's about Australia. How can I go past a question about Australia and your 2003 tour in Anthrax? I loved watching that particular version. I love Frank, by the way. I'm not throwing any shade at Frank whatsoever. Lovely guy. Spoken to him a couple of times, but boy, it was a real treat to see you play in Anthrax alongside of John. That version of the band, I think, would be my favourite. So, what were your memories of playing in Australia then?
Well, it was pretty crazy because this was at the start of my run with them. First, we did Japan right before that, so I did like 9 shows in Japan, and then we flew straight to Australia, and we started those runs. And this was all new to me. I was like trying to get my feet on the ground with the material and the live show, and keeping up with them physically was like, took some time, because as anyone that's seen them, it's a high energy situation. So I was still getting my legs, and my memories, I'd never been to Australia. It was my first time. So I was just in awe of the country. It was a beautiful place. I loved it. A lot of it reminded me of California, and that felt comfortable to me because that's where I'm from and it's where I live. So it felt like home, sort of, in a way. Food was amazing. People were super cool and great. It was almost everything and more than I was expecting. The physical part of it took a toll on me, though. I got sick in the first couple of days, and we had a lot of shows in a row. And Australia is a big place, so you can't get on a tour bus and drive to the next city in 8 hours. Like, you have to fly everywhere. So we were taking flights every morning. So after staying up, doing a show, staying up late, of course, I'm excited to be playing with Anthrax. I was head over heels, just stoked for that. So, I'm partying probably a little bit too much than I should have. Then I got sick. And flying when you're sick is just the worst thing ever. And so I held on and got through all the shows, and they were a blast. We just had a great time. The shows were great. The crowds were amazing. Just really cool.
Well, I don't know how to end this conversation except to say I wish I had far more time, but unfortunately I don't, mate. Yeah, I've been looking forward to talking. Yeah, I've got to give you this feedback. I actually started this podcast to talk to people like you. There was 3 or 4 people, and you're one of them. That I started the podcast in 2017 in the hopes that I'd talk to. So when Chris sent across the opportunity to chat with either Scott or Pearl and the other members of the band, there's only one name that I was looking at, and that's yours. And I've just so admired your playing through the years, the way you've conducted yourself too. There are frightfully few interviews with you out there. I don't think I'd love to see more videos online. I used to read your old columns in metal magazines on bass playing. You could find those magazines, and that's how I really got introduced to you. I'd see your name, and there was you and Steve DiGiorgio kept on coming up.
Wow, yeah.
You know, in rock and metal, there's always Steve Harris and Les Claypool and those guys, but you can't be them. Meaning their style it's inimitable. But I think you can aim to yourself, Doug Wimbish. Yourself and Doug. I think yourself and Doug. I'd actually say are my two favorite rock and metal bass, but probably maybe my two favorite bass players ever. And I've listened to the way that you've stuck to the pocket, and you've just driven it through, and you have always played for the song. But there's videos of you out there doing some mad slap and groove stuff, Curtis. Your Larry Graham stuff that you do. Mm-hmm. Just congratulations on doing it, on being a bassist and being able to do that, and just surviving in the very notorious music industry.
You. Yeah. Thank you very much. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
My pleasure. Well, look, I hope the rest of the calls go well, and thanks very much again, mate. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Have a good one.
Thanks, bro. No worries.
Cheers. All right. Bye.
Bye. One of the wonderful perks about doing this, I'd never call it a job, but this hobby of mine, if you like, because it isn't a money spinner, it's something that I do for the pure love out of it, is that I get an opportunity to talk to musical heroes, and that's exactly what Joey is. Some people have cartoon characters, Marvel comic people, whatever the hell that shit is. I don't really understand that, but anyway, I'm not knocking it, I just don't understand it. I also admire sports people, but I do place the musician's performance above all others, and Joey is right up there as far as I'm concerned, as you heard me talk about toward the end there. So thanks for tuning in. And before I let you go, I'd truly appreciate if you stick around and listen to me talk up my book that has recently been released. Scars and Guitars, Volume 1, Conversations from the World of Rock Music, Heavy Metal and Beyond. There is so much in there that you can wrap your ears around, which I'll talk to you all about in a moment. My name's Andrew Mackay Smith, and I'm the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast series. Thanks for listening.
This is Eric Rattan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew Mackay Smith.
I've been the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast since 2017. The first musician I interviewed for the show was David Vincent from Morbid Angel, and things have just snowballed from there. In all, I've posted almost 650 podcast episodes featuring conversations with many of the leading lights of rock, heavy metal and beyond. It just got to a point where I thought, I need to write a book about all this, so that's exactly what I did. In Scars and Guitars Volume 1, you'll read a heap of deep reveals and commentary, such as Des Fafara talking about Coal Chamber and why the band will never return.
If you're a band just starting out, you need to hear me. Do not start a band with partners. Ever.
Yeah, wise words there. Sage advice, mate, for anybody.
Don't ever, because I can't go do Coal Chamber right now unless I get others involved.
Phil Anselmo talks about the episode in his career which gives him the greatest sense of accomplishment.
I think the staying power of the fans and the staying power of the songs, whether it's Pantera, Down, or Superjoint, the fans remember the songs.
Alex Skolnick from Testament confirms that, yes, playing the guitar in Ozzy's band is anything but an ordinary gig. Will Silent Oz from Dimmu Borgir write a book? Pa from Sabaton gives advice to people who want to start a band.
Look at the team around you, look at the bandmates. If the guys want to be on the stage, then it's all cool. If the guys want to be backstage, then it's not going to be cool.
Current and former members of Cradle of Filth discuss the band's seminal 90s material. Read about the reaction to George Lynch and Mark from Suicide Silence's comments when they throw shade at then President Donald Trump.
We have this idiotic monster, this egotistical, self-aggrandizing, complete piece of shit in there. I just can't understand how we've gotten to this place.
And yeah, we kicked a hornet's nest with Sepultura. Percussive overlord Gene Hoglan talks about recording with Chuck Schuldiner.
Chuck was always, he was very, very open-minded, and he was into having his musicians that were playing with him just reach out for the best stuff that they had.
Phil Campbell from Motorhead discusses what it takes to get sober. John 5 answers his critics who dismiss his tenure with Marilyn Manson.
You know, my name is John 5, and Manson gave me that name, and I had some of the best years of my life in that band and learned a lot.
And we get the lowdown on Treyarch Zagtoth from those who would know, including his mother. All across Scars and Guitars Volume 1, there are moments of tension, relief, tragedy, exhilaration, and throughout it all, you'll obtain insight that I believe no one else has managed to obtain from many of your favourite artists. So treat yourself. Scars and Guitars Volume 1 is currently available as an ebook with a print edition on the horizon. Follow the links attached and download a sample. I'm sure you'll be compelled to read the whole book.